Becca Thompson had worked at Hayes Technology for 5 years. 5 years of arriving early, staying late, and never complaining. 5 years of being the person everyone came to when they needed something done right. 5 years that meant nothing the moment she chose compassion over punctuality. The morning started like any other Thursday. She woke at 6, made breakfast for Sophie, packed her daughter's lunch with a careful attention to nutrition that came from every dollar mattering. Sophie chatted about her upcoming school play while eating her oatmeal, excited about playing a sunflower in the class production. Becca smiled and listened, even though her mind was calculating how she'd stretch their grocery budget through the end of the month. They left their small apartment in East Nashville at 7:30. Becca dropped Sophie at school, hugging her tight, and watching until she disappeared safely inside the building. Then she drove downtown, parking in the cheap lot 3 blocks from the office because the closer spots cost too much. That's when everything changed. The man was lying on the sidewalk near the corner of 5th and Broadway. At first, Becca thought he might be homeless, but as she got closer, she saw his expensive suit, his polished shoes. He was clutching his chest, his face gray with pain, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. People were walking around him. Actually walking around a dying man like he was a puddle to avoid. Becca didn't think. She just acted. She dropped to her knees beside him, her work skirt getting dirty on the pavement. "Sir, can you hear me? I'm calling for help right now." His eyes found his, filled with fear and gratitude. She pulled out her phone, dialing with shaking fingers. The 911 operator answered immediately, and Becca explained the situation as clearly as she could while keeping one hand on the man's shoulder, trying to comfort him. "Stay with me," she told him. "Help is coming. You're going to be okay." He tried to speak, but couldn't manage words. His grip on her hand was surprisingly strong, like she was his anchor to consciousness. Becca stayed on her knees, ignoring the people rushing past to their important jobs and important meetings. This was more important. This was someone's father, someone's friend, someone's person who deserved not to die alone on a city sidewalk. The ambulance arrived after what felt like hours but was probably only 10 minutes. The paramedics took over, efficient and professional, loading the man onto a stretcher. He looked at her one last time as they wheeled him away, his lips forming words she couldn't hear over the siren. Becca stood slowly, her knees aching, her hands still trembling. She looked at her phone. 8:45. She was supposed to be at her desk at 8. She arrived at the office at 9, her hair messy, her skirt stained, her hand still shaking slightly from adrenaline. Her co-workers stared as she hurried to her desk. Before she could even log into her computer, Jennifer Walsh appeared in her doorway. "My office. Now." Becca followed, trying to organize her thoughts, trying to find the words to explain. But Jennifer didn't want explanations. "This is your 3rd late arrival in 6 months, Jennifer said, her voice sharp. "We've discussed this before. We have policies." "I know, and I'm so sorry, but there was a man on the street. He was having what looked like a heart attack. I called 911 and stayed with him until—" "That's very noble," Jennifer interrupted, her tone making it clear she found it anything but noble. "But it's not an excuse. You could have called from the office. You could have waved down someone else to help. You made a choice to be late, and choices have consequences." Becca felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Are you saying I should have left him there?" "I'm saying you should have prioritized your job," Jennifer said coldly. "I'm sorry, Rebecca, but we're terminating your employment effective immediately." The room spun. Becca gripped the edge of the desk. "Please. I'm a single mother. My daughter, she depends on me. I have bills, rent due this week. I've never been written up, never missed a deadline, never." "I'm sure you'll find something else," Jennifer said, standing to signal the conversation was over. "You have 30 minutes to collect your things. Security will escort you out." Walking through the office to her desk felt like a funeral march. Becca tried to keep her head high, tried not to cry, but tears stung her eyes anyway. Her friend Melissa from accounting hugged her quickly in the hallway. "This is wrong," Melissa whispered. "Everyone knows how hard you work." But knowing it was wrong didn't change anything. Becca packed her box, walked past security, and stepped out into the Nashville sunshine that now felt mocking instead of warm. She sat in her car for a long time, just breathing, trying to process what had just happened. Her phone buzzed. A text from the school. Sophie had forgotten her lunch. Could Becca bring it? She looked at the lunch sitting on the passenger seat, then at the empty office building where she no longer worked. Then she started the car and drove to her daughter's school, because that's what mothers do. They keep going, even when the world feels like it's ending. 24 hours earlier, Becca's biggest worry had been whether she could afford new shoes for Sophie before school pictures next month. Money was always tight, but she'd been managing. She'd been surviving. She'd even been setting aside $20 a week in a coffee can hidden in the back of her closet, dreaming of maybe taking Sophie to Dollywood for her 8th birthday. Wednesday evening had been normal. She'd picked up Sophie from after-school care, stopped at the grocery store where she carefully compared prices and used every coupon she'd clipped, then gone home to cook dinner. Spaghetti with jarred sauce because it stretched far, and Sophie loved it. They'd eaten together at their small kitchen table, Sophie talking non-stop about her best friend Hannah and the elaborate game they'd invented at recess. After dinner, Becca had helped with homework, simple subtraction problems that Sophie found frustrating. "I don't get why we need to learn this," Sophie had complained. "Can't I just use a calculator?" "Your brain is your best calculator," Becca had told her, the same thing her own mother had said years ago. "Besides, what if your phone dies and you need to figure out if you have enough money at the store?" They'd practiced until Sophie got them all right, then celebrated with one chocolate chip cookie each from the package Becca bought on sale. Bath time, story time, tucking Sophie into bed with a worn stuffed rabbit. "I love you to the moon and back," Becca had whispered, kissing her forehead. "To the moon and back and to the moon again," Sophie had replied, their nightly ritual. Then Becca had spent 2 hours paying bills online, moving money between accounts like a chess game, trying to figure out how to cover everything. The math never quite worked, but she always made it stretch somehow. Ramen noodles for lunch. Walking instead of driving when possible. Skipping haircuts and buying clothes at thrift stores. You did what you had to do. Thursday morning should have been unremarkable. She'd woken to her alarm, started coffee, gotten Sophie ready for school. She'd worn her favorite navy work dress, the one that was starting to fade, but still looked professional enough. She'd driven her daughter to school, watched her run inside with her backpack bouncing, and felt that familiar mixture of love and worry that every parent knows. The drive downtown took 20 minutes in light traffic. Becca had the radio playing softly, a country station that reminded her of her childhood in rural Tennessee. She'd been thinking about nothing in particular when she turned onto Broadway and saw the man lying on the sidewalk. At first, her brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe he dropped something. Maybe he was tying his shoe. But then she saw how still he was, how wrong his position looked, and her foot was on the brake before she consciously decided to stop. She parked illegally, hazard lights flashing, and ran to him. He was middle-aged, maybe mid-40s, with dark hair graying at the temples. His suit was expensive. She could tell even though she knew nothing about men's fashion. His face was ashen, his breathing shallow and rapid. "So." She knelt beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "Can you hear me?" His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then finding her face. He tried to speak but couldn't manage it. His hand moved to his chest, and she understood. Heart attack. It had to be. She'd called 911, given the address, described his symptoms. The operator had asked her to stay on the line, to keep talking to him, to keep him conscious. So she did. She talked about anything and everything. About Sophie's school play. About the weather being nice today. About how help was coming. How he was going to be fine. How he just needed to stay with her a little longer. Other people walked by. A woman in a business suit glanced over and kept walking. A group of young professionals crossed the street to avoid them. A man in a delivery uniform stopped for a moment, then shook his head and continued on. No one else stopped to help. Becca didn't judge them. She understood. Everyone was busy, everyone had places to be, everyone had their own problems. But she couldn't be that person. She couldn't walk away from someone who needed help, even if it meant being late, even if it meant getting in trouble. The man's grip on her hand tightened. She squeezed back, trying to send comfort through that connection. "You're doing great," she told him. "Stay with me. What's your name? Can you tell me your name?" He managed 2 words, barely a whisper. Jonathan Hayes. Okay, Jonathan. I'm Becca. You're going to be okay, Jonathan. I promise. The ambulance arrived in a rush of sirens and flashing lights. Paramedics took over with practiced efficiency, asking questions, checking vitals, preparing him for transport. One of them, a kind-faced woman with gray hair, squeezed Becca's shoulder. You probably saved his life. Good job staying with him. They loaded Jonathan onto the stretcher. As they wheeled him toward the ambulance, he turned his head, looking for her. Their eyes met one last time, and he mouthed 2 words, thank you. Then he was gone, disappearing into the ambulance, and Becca was left standing on the sidewalk with doty knees and a racing heart. She looked at her phone. 8:45. She was so late. She'd run to her car, driven the last few blocks to the office, parked haphazardly, and rushed inside. She thought maybe if she explained what happened, everyone would understand. She thought doing the right thing would matter. She'd been wrong. Now, sitting in her car outside the office building where she no longer worked, Becca thought about Jonathan Hayes. She hoped he was okay. She hoped he survived. She hoped someone was with him now, someone who loved him, someone who would hold his hand the way she had. She hoped saving his life hadn't cost her everything. Friday morning, Becca woke up with the irrational hope that yesterday had been a nightmare. Then she remembered. No job. No income. Rent due Monday. She'd cried herself to sleep, and now her eyes were puffy and her head ached. Sophie bounded into her room at 7, already dressed in her favorite purple shirt. Mom, can Hannah come over this weekend? Her mom said it's okay if you say yes. Becca pulled her daughter into a hug, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. Let me check our schedule, baby. We might need to do some apartment cleaning this weekend. Sophie wrinkled her nose but didn't argue. She was used to her mom saying they needed to wait on things. She didn't understand it meant they couldn't afford things, and Becca was grateful for that innocence. After dropping Sophie at school, Becca came home and opened her laptop. She spent 6 hours applying for jobs. Administrative assistant positions, receptionist roles, anything that might pay the bills. She updated her resume, wrote cover letters, filled out endless online applications. By 3 o'clock, she'd applied to 37 positions and heard back from exactly none. Her phone rang. The landlord. She let it go to voicemail, not ready to explain she didn't have rent yet. The voicemail notification popped up, and she didn't need to listen to know what it said. Pay or get out. That was always the message. Saturday morning brought more job applications. Becca's back hurt from sitting at the kitchen table for hours, and her eyes burned from staring at the computer screen. Around 11, someone knocked on her door. Mrs. Patterson from next door stood in the hallway, holding a casserole dish. She was 70-something, with white hair and kind eyes that missed nothing. I made too much lasagna, she said, which they both knew was a lie. Would you and Sophie like some? Becca's throat tightened. Mrs. Patterson, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Now take this before my arms give out. Becca took the warm dish, the smell making her realize she'd skipped breakfast. Thank you. Really. You're always so kind. That's what neighbors do, Mrs. Patterson said. She hesitated, then added quietly, I heard you lost your job. If you need anything, and I mean anything, you come knock on my door. Understand? Tears blurred Becca's vision. I understand. Thank you. Sunday brought an eviction notice. 3 days to pay or vacate. Becca stared at the paper taped to her door, her hands shaking. 3 days. Where was she supposed to get 2 months' rent in 3 days? She picked up Sophie from a playdate at Hannah's house. Hannah's parents were nice people who sometimes sent food home with Sophie, probably sensing things were tight. Today Hannah's mom, Carol, handed her a bag. Just some extra bread and sandwich meat we had. I hate to see it go to waste. Thank you, Carol. You're too kind. How's the job search going? Carol asked carefully. Still looking, Becca said, forcing a smile. I'm sure something will come up soon. That night, Sophie complained of a sore throat. Becca felt her forehead. Warm. Not terrible, but definitely a fever. Of course this would happen now. She gave Sophie children's pain medicine from the almost empty bottle in the bathroom cabinet and tucked her into bed early. Then she sat at the kitchen table with her head in her hands, looking at the stack of bills she couldn't pay. Medical bills from Sophie's last illness. Credit card bills she'd been slowly paying down. Utility bills that couldn't wait much longer. And now, maybe, another doctor visit. She thought about Jonathan Hayes. Was he okay? Had anyone told him what happened to her? Not that it mattered. He was probably a rich man who'd forgotten about the woman who stopped to help him. That's how these things went. You did the right thing and got nothing but problems in return. But even thinking that felt wrong. She hadn't helped him expecting a reward. She'd helped him because he needed help. Because walking past a dying person wasn't something she could live with. She'd made the right choice, even if the consequences were terrible. Monday morning, Sophie's fever was worse. Becca called the school to say she'd be absent, then researched free clinics. There was one in West Nashville that operated on a sliding scale. She could probably get Sophie seen for $20, maybe less. They could manage that. She dressed Sophie in comfortable clothes, packed some crackers and juice in case the wait was long, and drove across town. The clinic was in an old building that had clearly seen better days, but it was clean and the staff seemed caring. They checked in and sat down to wait. Sophie leaned against her, tired and feverish. Becca stroked her hair and whispered reassurances. "You're going to feel better soon, baby. I promise." Looking around the waiting room, Becca saw other families in similar situations. A mother with 3 kids. An elderly man alone. A young couple with a crying baby. All of them probably struggling, all of them trying their best. She didn't feel alone in her struggles, which was somehow both comforting and heartbreaking. Then the door opened, and someone walked in who made Becca's heart stop. It was him, Jonathan Hayes, the man she'd saved on the street. He was alive, walking, talking to the clinic staff, and he was heading right toward the waiting area. Their eyes met across the room. For a moment, Becca thought she might be hallucinating. 3 days of stress, little sleep, and worry could do that to a person. But no, it was really him. Jonathan Hayes, wearing casual clothes instead of a suit, looking healthy and whole, walking through the free clinic with purpose. Sophie tugged her sleeve. "Mom, who's that man? Why are you staring?" "Just someone I met once, honey," Becca whispered, unable to look away. Jonathan was talking with the clinic director, a tired-looking woman in scrubs who was nodding enthusiastically at whatever he was saying. Then he turned, scanning the waiting room, and his gaze locked onto Becca again. Recognition lit up his face, followed immediately by surprise, then something that looked like concern. He excused himself from the conversation and walked directly toward her. Becca's mouth went dry. What was he doing here? Did he remember her? Of course he remembered her. She'd saved his life. But why would a wealthy man be at a free clinic? "Excuse me," Jonathan said as he reached them, his voice warm and slightly uncertain. "I'm sorry to bother you, but you're the woman from the street. Last Thursday, you stayed with me when I collapsed." Becca nodded, suddenly very aware of her second-hand clothes and Sophie's presence beside her. "I'm glad you're okay. I was worried about you." "You were worried about me?" He looked genuinely amazed. "You saved my life. The doctors said if you hadn't stayed with me, kept me conscious, I probably wouldn't have made it. I've been trying to find you. The paramedics didn't get your full name, and I've been checking hospitals and asking everywhere. You were looking for me." Becca's voice came out smaller than she intended. "Of course. I needed to thank you properly. And too." He paused, noticing Sophie for the first time. "I'm sorry. I'm being rude. I'm Jonathan." He offered his hand to Sophie with the same respect he'd show an adult. Sophie shook it solemnly. "I'm Sophie. I have a fever. That's why we're here." "I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you feel better soon." He looked back at Becca. "Do you have a minute to talk? I don't want to intrude, but there's so much I need to say." Becca glanced at the reception desk. "They said it might be a 2-hour wait. I have time." Jonathan sat down in the empty chair beside her. Up close, Becca could see he was younger than she'd thought, maybe mid-40s. He had kind eyes and smile lines, the face of someone who laughed often. But right now, he looked serious. First, thank you. I know I said it then, but I need you to understand. You saved my life. You didn't know me, you had no reason to help, but you did. That means everything. Anyone would have done the same, Becca said, though they both knew that wasn't true. They didn't. I remember people walking past. You were the only one who stopped. He leaned forward, his expression intent. I need to know your name. I need to know how to reach you. I want to do something to thank you properly. Becca hesitated. She didn't want his charity. She'd done what anyone should do in that situation. But something in his eyes, genuine gratitude and concern, made her answer. I'm Rebecca Thompson. Everyone calls me Becca. Rebecca. He repeated it like he was committing it to memory. Are you from Nashville? Born and raised in Tennessee. We live in East Nashville now, Sophie and I. She realized she was volunteering information he hadn't asked for, and stopped herself. What do you do for work, if you don't mind me asking? The question felt like a punch to the stomach. I was an administrative assistant. I actually got fired last Thursday. For being late. Because I stopped to help you. The color drained from Jonathan's face. What? It's okay, Becca said quickly, though it wasn't, not even a little bit. It was my third time being late in 6 months. They have policies. I understand. Where did you work? His voice had changed, become harder somehow. Hayes Technology. I was there for 5 years, but... Hayes Technology. He repeated the words slowly. You worked at my company. The world tilted. Becca stared at him. Your company. I own Hayes Technology. I founded it 15 years ago. I was coming from an early meeting with investors last Thursday when I collapsed. He ran his hand through his hair, agitation clear in every movement. You're telling me my own company fired you for saving my life? They didn't know it was you, Becca said quickly. And like I said, I'd been late before. I'm a single mom, and sometimes Sophie gets sick or there's traffic or... Stop. Jonathan held up his hand. You saved my life. You lost your job because of it. And now you're at a free clinic because... He looked at Sophie, understanding dawning. Because you can't afford a regular doctor. Becca felt her cheeks burn with shame. We manage. We okay. You're not okay. His voice was gentle but firm. And that's my fault. If you hadn't stopped to help me, you'd still have your job. You'd be able to take your daughter to a regular doctor. You wouldn't be. He stopped, seeming to struggle with his emotions. I need to make this right. Please let me make this right. You don't owe me anything. I did what anyone should do. But I do owe you. I owe you everything. I have a teenage son, Rebecca. I almost never saw him again because of my heart. You gave me the chance to fix things with him. You gave me my future back. The least I can do is help with your immediate problems. Sophie piped up, we might lose our apartment. Mom thinks I don't know, but I heard her on the phone. Sophie, Becca said quietly, mortified. But Jonathan was already pulling out his phone. What's your address? I'm sending someone to pay your rent right now. Today. And we're getting Sophie to a real doctor, not making her wait in a free clinic. And then you and I need to talk about your job situation, because I guarantee you this, you're not going to be unemployed for one more day. Tears filled Becca's eyes. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. And not because I owe you, though I do, but because it's the right thing to do. You taught me that. When you stopped on that street, when you stayed with me instead of going to your job, you showed me what real kindness looks like. Now let me show you. Becca looked at Sophie, who was watching the conversation with wide eyes. She thought about the eviction notice, the bills, the empty job applications. She thought about pride versus practicality, about what was best for her daughter versus what her ego wanted. And then she made a decision. Okay, she whispered. Okay, thank you. Jonathan smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Thank you for letting me help. Now, let's take care of Sophie. I have a pediatrician on call who owes me a favor. then we're going to fix everything else. Would you accept help like this, or would pride hold you back? Subscribe and comment below to share your thoughts as this story takes an amazing turn. Within 30 minutes, everything changed. Jonathan made 3 phone calls, and suddenly Becca's world stopped spinning out of control. The first call was to his personal pediatrician, Dr. Sarah Mitchell. "Sarah, I need a favor. I have a 7-year-old girl with a fever who needs to be seen today. Can you fit her in?" A pause. "Perfect. We'll be there in 20 minutes. And Sarah, bill me directly. The family isn't to see any charges." The second call was to someone named Marcus. "I need you to pay off a rental account. Yes, today. Right now." He looked at Becca. "What's your landlord's name and the property address?" She told him, her voice shaking. "Did you get that, Marcus? Pay off everything that's owed, including any late fees. And prepay 6 months in advance." He listened to whatever Marcus said, then added, "I don't care what it costs. Just handle it." The third call was the one that made Becca's hands tremble. "Jennifer, it's Jonathan Hayes. Yes, I know I've been out on medical leave. I need you to explain to me why Rebecca Thompson was terminated last Thursday." His voice had gone cold, the warmth completely gone. "She was late because she was saving my life." "My life, Jennifer. She stopped on her way to work because I was dying on a sidewalk." A long pause. "I don't care what the policy says. She worked for our company for 5 years with an excellent record, and the one time she was late for a legitimate reason, you fired her. We're going to discuss this when I'm back in the office. Today, you're going to reinstate her with back pay and a formal apology. No, that's not negotiable." He hung up and turned to Becca. "Done. You're officially re-employed as of today, with back pay for the time you were terminated." Becca couldn't speak. She just stared at him, tears streaming down her face. Sophie tugged his sleeve. "Are you magic? Like a wizard?" Jonathan laughed, the sound breaking some of the tension. "No magic, sweetheart. Just trying to fix a mistake. Come on, let's get you to the doctor." Dr. Mitchell's office was in Green Hills, a beautiful building with a kids' play area and friendly staff. They were taken back immediately, no waiting. The doctor was kind and thorough, examining Sophie and running a quick strep test. "Good news," Dr. Mitchell said 20 minutes later. "It's just a virus. Plenty of rest, lots of fluids, and these fever reducers should help. She'll be back to normal in a few days." She handed Becca a prescription and some sample medications. "These should get you started. If she's not better in a week, give me a call." She winked at Sophie. "And pick out a sticker on your way out. You were very brave." In the parking lot, Becca finally found her voice. "I don't know how to thank you. This is too much. It's all too much." Jonathan leaned against his car, a nice sedan that was fancy but not flashy. Becca, can I be honest with you?" "Of course." "When I woke up in that hospital last Thursday, the doctors told me what happened. They told me about the woman who stayed with me, who kept me conscious, who might have saved my life. I asked everyone I could find to help me locate you. I wanted to thank you, yes, but I also wanted to know who you were. What kind of person stops their whole life to help a stranger?" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Then I learned you'd been fired from my company for doing it. Do you understand how that made me feel? I built Hayes Technology from nothing. I always believed we were a good company, a company that valued people. Finding out we fired someone for being a good human being, it made me sick." "You can't blame yourself for that," Becca said. "You were unconscious in a hospital. You didn't make that decision." "No, but I created the environment where that decision could be made. That's on me. And I'm going to fix it. Not just for you, but for everyone at the company. We're going to have new policies, better training. No one else is going to lose their job for helping someone in need." Sophie, who'd been quiet, suddenly said, "My mom's the best. She always helps people." "I believe that," Jonathan said seriously. "Your mom is pretty amazing." Becca wiped her eyes. "I should let you go. You've already done so much. More than I ever expected or deserved." "About that?" Jonathan straightened. I don't want you going back to your old position. No offense to administrative assistant work, but I think you're capable of more. I need an executive assistant. Someone who can think on their feet, handle pressure, and who actually has a heart. The job pays twice what you were making before. Are you interested? Becca's mouth fell open. You're offering me a job? Just like that. Just like that. You've already proven you have the most important qualification, character. Everything else can be taught. He pulled out his phone. Give me your number. I'll send you the details and we can discuss start date and everything else. But first, I have one more call to make. He dialed, putting the phone on speaker. Marcus. The property management company called? Good. Yes, tell Ms. Thompson I've taken care of it. Becca's phone buzzed with a text. Her landlord, your account is now current and prepaid through next April. Late fees waived. Thank you for your prompt payment. She stared at the message, then at Jonathan. You prepaid 6 months of rent. Is that okay? I figured it would give you some breathing room while you get back on your feet. And before you argue, remember that I wouldn't be here to do this if not for you. Consider it a small down payment on the debt I owe you. Sophie jumped up and down. Does this mean we don't have to move? I can still go to my school. That's what it means, baby, Becca said, scooping her up in a hug. She looked at Jonathan over her daughter's shoulder. I don't know how to repay you for this. You don't have to. You already did by stopping on that street. He smiled. Now, let's talk about your start date. How does Monday sound? That gives you the weekend to rest and prepare. I'll have HR send over all the paperwork, and we'll get you set up with everything you need. Becca set Sophie down and stood straighter. Monday sounds perfect. I won't let you down. I know you won't. That's why I hired you. He checked his watch. I should go. I have physical therapy in an hour. My heart's fine now, but the doctors want me to take it easy for a few more weeks. But I'll see you Monday morning. 9 o'clock. We'll start your training, and I'll introduce you to everyone. As they drove home, Sophie chatted excitedly about the nice doctor and the cool stickers and how Mr. Jonathan was so nice. Becca listened, her hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process everything that had just happened. In one afternoon, she'd gone from facing eviction to having 6 months of prepaid rent. From unemployed to having a better job than before. From worried about how to pay for Sophie's doctor visit to having it completely covered. All because she'd stopped to help someone who needed it. As they pulled into their apartment complex, Becca said a quiet prayer of gratitude. Maybe kindness did pay back. Maybe doing the right thing did matter. Maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. Monday morning felt like the first day of a new life. Becca woke up early, energized instead of anxious. She made breakfast for Sophie, packed a lunch that wasn't stretched thin by budget constraints, and actually took time to style her hair properly. You look pretty, Mom, Sophie said through a mouthful of cereal. Thank you, baby. Big day today. After dropping Sophie at school, Becca drove to Hayes Technology, the same building where she'd been escorted out by security less than a week ago. She took a deep breath and walked through the doors. The receptionist, Maria, looked up and gasped. Becca. Oh my gosh, we heard what happened. I'm so sorry. That was completely wrong. Thank you, Maria. Actually, I'm back. Starting a new position today. Really? That's wonderful. Maria's genuine happiness made Becca smile. Mr. Hayes left instructions to send you straight up to the executive floor when you arrived. 6th floor, west side. The executive floor. Becca had never been up there before. It was where the important people worked, the ones who made big decisions. She rode the elevator up, her stomach fluttering with nerves. Jonathan was waiting in the hallway when the doors opened. He was wearing a suit today, looking every bit the successful CEO, but his smile was the same warmth she remembered from the clinic. Good morning. How's Sophie? Much better. The fever broke yesterday, and she's already back to her normal energy level. Excellent. Ready for your first day. He gestured for her to follow him. Your office is right next to mine. That's standard for executive assistants. It gives you easy access to me for meetings, and me easy access to you for questions and support. Her office was beautiful. A real desk, not a cubicle. A window overlooking downtown Nashville. A computer with 2 large monitors. A nameplate that said Rebecca Thompson, Executive Assistant to the CEO. I had IT set everything up over the weekend, Jonathan said. Your login credentials are in the envelope on your desk. Any problems, just call them. Their numbers programmed in the phone. Becca walked to the window, looking out at the city. A few blocks away was the corner where she'd helped Jonathan. From up here, it looked so small, so insignificant. But that moment had changed everything. This is too much, she whispered. It's exactly right, Jonathan corrected gently. Now, let's talk about what this job actually involves. I'm going to be honest with you. It's demanding. Long hours sometimes. Lots of meetings to coordinate, schedules to manage, decisions to help with. But I also believe in work-life balance. If Sophie's sick or has a school event, you tell me, and we make it work. Family comes first. Always. They spent the morning going over systems and processes. Jonathan was patient, explaining everything clearly, never making her feel stupid for asking questions. Around 11, there was a knock on his office door. Come in, Jonathan called. Jennifer Walsh entered, looking uncomfortable. She saw Becca, and her eyes widened. Oh, Rebecca, I heard you were back. Ms. Walsh, Becca said politely. Jonathan's expression cooled. Jennifer, I asked you to come by so we could discuss what happened last week. Becca, you should stay for this. It concerns you. Jennifer shifted on her feet. Mr. Hayes, I was following company policy. 3 lates in 6 months results in termination. It's in the employee handbook. Policy is important, Jonathan agreed. But so is context. So is understanding that our employees are human beings with real lives. Becca wasn't late because she overslept or didn't care. She was late because she stopped to save someone's life. My life. And you fired her for it. I didn't know it was your life she saved, Jennifer said quickly. That shouldn't matter. It could have been anyone. The point is she did something extraordinarily good, and our company punished her for it. That tells me we have a culture problem, and culture starts with management. He leaned back in his chair. Effective today, I'm implementing new policies. No employee will be penalized for being late due to emergency situations where they are helping others. Medical emergencies, accidents, anyone in immediate need. We're also starting mandatory training for all managers on compassionate leadership. That's very generous, but I'm not finished. You're going to be leading that training, Jennifer. You're going to help develop it, attend it, and then teach other managers what you've learned. Consider this your chance to grow as a leader. I believe people can change when given the opportunity. Do you want that opportunity? Jennifer looked at Becca, then back at Jonathan. Yes, I do. And Rebecca, I owe you an apology. I was following rules without thinking about the person behind them. That was wrong. I'm sorry. Becca was surprised by the sincerity in her voice. I appreciate that. Thank you. After Jennifer left, Jonathan turned to Becca. I believe in second chances. She made a mistake, but she's willing to learn from it. That's what matters. You're very kind, Becca said. I'm practical. Good leaders are hard to find. Leaders willing to admit mistakes and grow are even harder. But enough about that. Let's grab lunch and I'll introduce you to the rest of the executive team. Lunch was in the company cafeteria, which was much nicer than Becca had realized. Subsidized prices meant employees could get good food cheaply. Jonathan introduced her to the CFO, the Chief Technology Officer, the head of HR. Everyone was welcoming, and several mentioned they'd heard about what she did for Jonathan. You're kind of a legend already, said the CTO, a woman named Beth. The woman who saved the boss and got fired for it, then came back even stronger. People are talking about it. Becca wasn't sure how she felt about being a legend, but the attention was mostly positive. Coworkers she'd never spoken to stopped by her office to say hello and welcome her back. Around 3, Jonathan called her into his office. Quick question. Do you have anyone to pick up Sophie from school if you're running late? Usually Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor. Why? I have a 5 o'clock meeting that might run long. Would it be okay if I sent my driver to pick up Sophie and bring her here? She can do homework in your office or the break room until we're done. I don't want you to worry about her while you're working. Becca's throat tightened. You don't have to do that. I know, but I want to. Is that okay? She nodded, not trusting her voice. He was thinking about her daughter, making sure Sophie was cared for. That wasn't just being a good boss. That was being a genuinely good person. The meeting did run long, until almost 6. But when Becca went back to her office, Sophie was there, coloring at the desk while eating apple slices and cheese crackers someone had brought her. She looked up and grinned. Mom, a fancy car brought me here. It had snacks. Can we get a fancy car? Becca laughed, hugging her. Maybe someday, baby. Jonathan appeared in the doorway. All finished. Thank you for staying late. How was your first day? Perfect, Becca said honestly. Thank you for everything. For this opportunity, for thinking about Sophie, for all of it. You earned it. See you tomorrow, Becca. Bye, Sophie. Bye, Mr. Jonathan, Sophie called, waving. Driving home, Becca felt lighter than she had in years. A good job. Enough money. A boss who cared about her as a person, not just as an employee. Maybe, just maybe, things really were going to be okay. That night, after tucking Sophie into bed, Becca stood at her kitchen window looking out at Nashville. One act of kindness had changed her life. Jonathan's gratitude had transformed everything. But more than that, his example was showing her something important. When you have the power to help someone, you should. And when you receive help, you should accept it with grace and look for ways to pay it forward. She was going to do that. Somehow, she was going to take what Jonathan had done for her and find ways to help others. That was how kindness worked. It multiplied. It spread. It changed the world one person at a time. 3 months into her new position, Becca had found her rhythm at Hayes Technology. She'd proven herself capable and organized, anticipating Jonathan's needs before he asked, managing his complex schedule with ease. But more importantly, she discovered she genuinely enjoyed the work. She was learning about business strategy, technology development, and leadership in ways her old position never allowed. One afternoon, Jonathan called her into his office with an unusual request. I've been thinking about what happened with you and the old policy. How many other good people have we lost because of rigid rules that don't account for real life? I want to do something about it. Something bigger than just changing our policies here. What did you have in mind? Becca asked, intrigued. A program, the Second Chance Initiative, specifically designed to hire people who've been fired or passed over because they chose to help others. People who stopped to change a flat tire and missed an interview. Parents who stayed home with sick kids. Anyone who got punished for being a decent human being. He leaned forward, excitement clear in his voice. But I need help developing it. I need someone who understands what it's like to be on the other side. Would you be interested in helping me create this? Becca felt her heart race. You want me to help develop a company program? More than that, I want you to help lead it. You'd still be my executive assistant, but this would be an additional responsibility. With additional compensation, of course. What do you think? I think it's brilliant. When do we start? They worked on it for weeks, developing criteria and interview processes. They partnered with HR to create training programs for people who'd been out of work. They reached out to community organizations to spread the word. And they set up a special application process where people could tell their stories without judgment. The response was overwhelming. Within the first month, they received 200 applications. Each one told a story of someone who'd been penalized for kindness. A nurse who'd stopped to help at a car accident and been fired for being late. A teacher who'd stayed after hours with a struggling student and missed a required meeting. A contractor who'd helped an elderly neighbor with emergency repairs and lost a big client. Becca read every application, her heart breaking and swelling in equal measure. So many good people. So many acts of kindness that had been punished instead of celebrated. We can't help all of them, she told Jonathan one evening as they reviewed applications. At least not all at once. No, but we can start. Let's hire 10 people this quarter. Train them, support them, help them succeed. Then hire 10 more next quarter. It's not going to solve everything, but it's a beginning. They made their first hires in early fall. 10 people with incredible stories, all hired into positions that matched their skills and experience. Becca helped coordinate their onboarding, making sure each person felt welcomed and valued. One of the hires was a man named Robert Chen. He'd been a marketing director until he took a week off work without approval to help his elderly parents evacuate during flooding in their town. He'd lost his job, and no one would hire him after that. Now he was Hayes Technologies' new senior marketing manager. Another was Christine Baker, a software developer who'd been fired for being late multiple times because she was caring for her dying mother. She'd had no one else to help, and her old company showed no flexibility. Now she was part of Hayes Technologies' development team. During a company-wide meeting to introduce the new hires, Jonathan told their stories. The room was silent as people listened, many with tears in their eyes. Then he said something that made Becca's chest tighten with emotion. These people represent what I want Hayes Technology to be about. Not just profits and growth, though those matter, but values, character. The understanding that how we treat people matters more than hitting every deadline or following every rule. Rebecca Thompson taught me that. When she stopped to save my life, she showed me what real kindness looks like. Now we're going to make sure that kindness isn't just tolerated here. It's celebrated. The entire company stood up and applauded. Not just polite applause, but genuine, enthusiastic appreciation. Becca felt tears stream down her face as her co-workers cheered for a vision of business that put people first. After the meeting, Robert Chen found her. Thank you. I'd almost given up on finding work. I thought my career was over because I chose my family. You gave me hope again. You earned this opportunity, Becca told him. I'm just glad we found you. Christine Baker came over too. My daughter asked me last week if doing the right thing always makes life harder. I didn't know what to tell her. Now I can tell her about this. About how sometimes kindness does come back. Thank you. The stories kept coming. A cashier who'd been fired for giving food to a hungry homeless man and now worked in their facilities management team. A paralegal who'd been let go for spending her lunch breaks volunteering at a women's shelter and now worked in their legal department. An accountant who'd been terminated for helping a coworker through a mental health crisis and now worked in their finance division. Each person brought talent, dedication, and a deep understanding of what it meant to be given a second chance. The impact on company culture was immediate and profound. People worked harder, not because they feared being fired, but because they felt valued. Collaboration improved. Innovation increased. And the story of the Second Chance Initiative started attracting attention beyond the company. A local news station reached out wanting to do a feature. Jonathan agreed, but only if Becca was part of it. This was your story first. You deserve recognition. The segment aired in October. It showed the new employees, told their stories, and highlighted Hayes Technology as a company doing business differently. The response was incredible. Other companies called asking about the program. Job applications tripled. And most importantly, people who'd been fired for helping others started seeing hope again. We're creating something bigger than just a hiring program, Jonathan told Becca after the news segment aired. We're starting a movement. We're showing that businesses can be successful and compassionate. That profit and people don't have to be in conflict. But Becca saw something else too. She saw how the people they'd hired were already paying it forward. Robert Chen started volunteering at a job training center on weekends. Christine Baker organized a company fundraiser for cancer research in her mother's memory. The cashier they'd hired, a woman named Melissa Rodriguez, started a company food drive that collected thousands of pounds for local food banks. Kindness was multiplying, just like Becca had hoped. It was spreading through the company, into the community, creating ripples that reached farther than anyone had imagined. One evening, working late with Jonathan on expansion plans for the initiative, he looked up at her and smiled. You know what the best part of all this is? What? That morning on the sidewalk, when you stopped to help me, you had no idea what would happen. You didn't help me because you thought you'd get something out of it. You helped because it was right. And look what that single choice created. Hundreds of people are being helped now because you chose kindness that one morning. That's incredible. Becca thought about that as she drove home. One choice, one moment, one act of kindness. And now hundreds of lives were changing. It was more than she ever could have imagined. Winter arrived in Nashville with cold rain and gray skies, but inside Hayes Technology, warmth and optimism filled every floor. The Second Chance Initiative had hired 30 people by December, with plans to double that in the new year. The company was thriving financially too. Employee retention had increased, productivity was up, and several major clients had signed on specifically because they wanted to work with a values-driven company. But something else was changing too, something Becca tried not to think about too much. She and Jonathan were becoming closer, not just as boss and employee, but as friends. Real friends who talked about more than work. It started small. Jonathan asking about Sophie's latest school project. Becca asking about his son, Michael, who she'd learned was 16 and living with his mother in Atlanta. Small conversations that grew longer, more personal. One rainy afternoon in early December, Becca stayed late helping Jonathan prepare for a board meeting. Around 7, he looked up from his laptop and said, "I'm starving. Have you eaten?" "Not since lunch." "There's a great Thai place 2 blocks away. Want to grab something?" "My treat. Consider it overtime compensation." They walked through the rain to the restaurant, a cozy place with warm lighting and friendly staff. Over pad thai and spring rolls, their conversation drifted from work to life. "Tell me about Michael," Becca said. "You mention him sometimes, but I don't know much about him." Jonathan's expression softened and saddened. "He's a great kid. Smart, funny, kind. His mother and I divorced when he was 8. I was working constantly back then, building the company. I missed so many important moments. His baseball games, his birthday parties, regular dinners together. By the time I realized what I'd lost, he'd already pulled away. That must be hard." "It is. I've been trying to fix things, but it's slow. He comes to visit sometimes, but there's distance between us. Not anger, just absence. Like we're friendly strangers instead of father and son." He took a drink of water. The heart attack scared him though. He called me in the hospital, crying. I hadn't heard him cry since he was little. It reminded both of us that time isn't unlimited. "Are things getting better?" "Slowly. He's coming for Christmas this year. First time in 3 years. I'm nervous about it, to be honest. I want it to go well so badly that I'm probably going to overthink everything." Becca smiled. "You know what Sophie loves. When people actually pay attention to her. Not just half listening while doing something else, but really listening. Maybe that's all Michael needs too. Your real attention." "That's good advice. Thank you." Jonathan looked at her thoughtfully. "You're a really good mom, you know that? Sophie's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have her. She's the best thing that ever happened to me, even though her father didn't stick around to be part of her life. His loss. His loss indeed." Jonathan's voice was quiet. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "How do you do it? Single parenting, working full-time, staying positive. You never seem overwhelmed, even though I know you must be sometimes." Becca considered the question. "Honestly, I don't have a choice. Sophie depends on me, so I keep going. But also, I try to remember that hard times pass. Things get better. I've seen it happen. 3 months ago, I was facing eviction. Now look at us, having dinner and talking about life. Things change. You just have to hold on during the hard parts." "You're remarkable," Jonathan said, and there was something in his voice that made Becca's heart skip. She changed the subject quickly. "So, Christmas plans besides Michael's visit?" They talked until the restaurant staff started cleaning up around them, then walked back to get their cars. The rain had stopped, and the city glittered with Christmas lights. "Thank you for dinner," Becca said. "And for the conversation. It was nice." It was. We should do it again sometime. 2 weeks later, Sophie's school held their holiday play. Sophie was playing an elf, and she'd been practicing her lines for weeks. Becca had taken the afternoon off to attend, but as she sat in the audience waiting for the program to start, someone slid into the seat beside her. "Hope I'm not late," Jonathan said, slightly out of breath. Becca stared at him. What are you doing here? You mentioned Sophie's play. I thought I'd come watch. If that's okay. Of course it's okay. I just didn't expect you didn't have to. I wanted to. He smiled. Besides, I've heard a lot about this play. Sophie talks about it every time I see her at the office. The play was charming in the way elementary school plays always are, with kids forgetting lines and waving at parents. Sophie did great, delivering her lines clearly and only waving once. When it was over and the kids came out to find their parents, Sophie's face lit up when she saw Jonathan. Mr. Jonathan, you came to my play. I wouldn't miss it. You were excellent. Very professional. Sophie beamed, then grabbed both their hands. Can we get ice cream? Mom always says we can get ice cream after programs. Jonathan looked at Becca. Can we get ice cream? They ended up at a local ice cream shop, Sophie between them in the booth, chattering about the play and her upcoming winter break. Jonathan listened intently, asking questions and laughing at her stories. Watching them together, Becca felt something shift in her chest. Jonathan wasn't just being kind to her daughter because Becca worked for him. He genuinely enjoyed Sophie's company, and Sophie clearly adored him. You're going to spoil her, Becca said softly while Sophie was distracted by her ice cream. Good, Jonathan said firmly. Every kid should be spoiled sometimes. And she deserves it. Over the next few weeks, Jonathan started joining them for small things. A Saturday afternoon at the park, when they ran into each other. A Christmas market downtown, where they looked at crafts and drank hot chocolate. It felt natural, easy, like they were becoming a unit. But Becca worried. Jonathan was her boss. He was wealthy and successful. She was his employee, a single mom still figuring out how to not live paycheck to paycheck. They were from different worlds. "You overthinking," Mrs. Patterson told her one evening after observing Jonathan drop off some books he'd bought for Sophie. "That man likes you. And you like him. What's the problem?" "He's my boss. And we're just so different." "Different how?" "You're both kind people. You both work hard. You both care about Sophie. Sounds pretty similar to me." Mrs. Patterson patted her hand. "Don't run from something good because you're scared. You deserve happiness, Rebecca. Let yourself have it." On Christmas Eve, Jonathan invited them to his house for dinner. Just the three of them, since Michael was coming the next day. His house was beautiful but not ostentatious, decorated for Christmas with care that Becca suspected he'd done himself. He'd cooked dinner, a simple meal of roast chicken and vegetables. "I'm not a great cook," he admitted, "but I wanted to do something special." After dinner, they sat in his living room with a fire going, and Jonathan gave Sophie a present. She unwrapped it carefully, gasping when she saw the beautiful children's book inside, a special illustrated edition of her favorite story. "Thank you," Sophie whispered, hugging it to her chest. "You're very welcome." He pulled out another box, handing it to Becca. "For you." Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a small heart pendant. Simple, elegant, not too expensive, but clearly chosen with thought. "Jonathan, I can't accept this." "Yes, you can. Please. It's just a thank you for everything you've done for me. For saving my life, yes, but also for helping me build something meaningful with the initiative. For being an incredible assistant and an even better friend." Friend. The word should have been reassuring, but instead it made Becca's heart ache with wanting more. That night, after putting Sophie to bed in their apartment, Becca stood at her window looking at the lights of the city. She was falling for Jonathan Hayes. Maybe had already fallen. And she had no idea what to do about it. January brought a surprise proposal. Not the kind Becca had started dreaming about, but something equally life-changing. Jonathan called an emergency meeting with her, the HR director, and several board members. "I've been thinking about the Second Chance initiative," he said. "It's doing amazing work, but we're limited by being tied to one company. What if we expanded it? Made it a full foundation that could help people across Tennessee, maybe eventually across the country?" The board members looked intrigued. "What exactly are you proposing?" one asked. "A non-profit foundation. We'd provide emergency funds for people who've been fired or faced consequences for helping others. We'd offer job placement services, legal assistance if needed, financial counseling. We'd be a safety net for people who chose kindness and got punished for it. He pulled up a presentation on the screen, and Becca realized he'd been working on this for weeks. The research was thorough, the budget realistic, the mission clear. I'm prepared to fund the foundation's first year personally, Jonathan continued. After that, we'll pursue grants and donations. But here's the key part. I don't want to run this alone. I want a co-director. Someone who understands what we're trying to do from personal experience. Someone who's brilliant, compassionate, and dedicated. He looked directly at Becca. I want you. The room was silent. Becca felt everyone's eyes on her. You want me to co-direct a foundation? I do. You'd still work for Hayes Technology, but in a dual role. Your salary would be split between the company and the foundation. You'd have autonomy to make decisions, hire staff, develop programs. I'd handle the business side and fundraising. You'd handle the operations and direct service. We'd be partners in this. Becca's mind raced. A foundation. Real resources to help people who needed second chances. The opportunity to make a difference on a scale she'd never imagined. But also, more time working closely with Jonathan, which both thrilled and terrified her. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. Take the week. But Becca, I mean this. I can't do this without you. Your insight, your empathy, your understanding of what people need, that's what will make this work. Please consider it carefully. She thought about little else that week. She talked to Mrs. Patterson, who told her she'd be crazy not to do it. She talked to Sophie, who thought it sounded cool that her mom would help lots of people. She even called her own mother, who she didn't talk to often, and got similar advice. Finally, she said yes. They spent February building the foundation, filing paperwork, hiring staff, setting up offices in a building near Hayes Technology. Jonathan was energized in a way Becca had never seen, throwing himself into the work with passion. This is what I should have been doing all along, he told her one night as they worked late. Building technology is fine, but this is meaningful. This is about people's lives. They decided to launch with a gala in March, inviting donors, community leaders, and the people they'd already helped through the initiative. The event would showcase their work and hopefully raise additional funds. Becca threw herself into planning. She wanted every detail perfect. She worked with caterers, coordinated with venues, managed invitations. Sophie helped sometimes, stuffing envelopes and adding glitter to handmade thank you cards. Through it all, she and Jonathan grew even closer. Late-night planning sessions turned into deep conversations. Working breakfasts became opportunities to share dreams and fears. They moved around each other with easy familiarity, finishing each other's sentences, anticipating each other's needs. Mrs. Patterson noticed. You two are like a married couple, she said one day when Jonathan stopped by the apartment to drop off some foundation documents. We're just colleagues, Becca said quickly. Too quickly. Sure you are. Mrs. Patterson winked. The night before the gala, Becca couldn't sleep. So much was riding on this. What if no one came? What if they couldn't raise enough money? What if she'd pushed Jonathan to invest in something that would fail? Her phone buzzed at midnight. A text from Jonathan. Can't sleep either. Want to go for a drive. They met at an all-night diner, sitting in a back booth with coffee neither of them really wanted. I'm terrified, Becca admitted. What if tomorrow is a disaster? It won't be. And even if something goes wrong, we'll figure it out. That's what partners do. Partners, Becca repeated. Is that what we are? Jonathan looked at her for a long moment. We're something, Becca. I don't know exactly what yet, but we're definitely something. Her heart raced. What do you mean? I mean I can't stop thinking about you. I mean every day I look forward to seeing you, and not just because you're incredible at your job. I mean Sophie makes me laugh in ways my own son hasn't in years, and watching you parent her makes me wish I'd done things differently with Michael. He reached across the table, taking her hand. I mean I think I'm falling for you, and I don't know if that's appropriate or allowed or smart, but it's true. Becca stared at their joined hands. I think I'm falling for you too. But I'm scared. You're my boss. You're rich and successful. I'm just nothing. You're not just anything. You're Becca Thompson, who saved my life, who co-directs a foundation, who's raising an amazing daughter, who's one of the strongest, kindest, most capable people I've ever met. He squeezed her hand. I know the timing is complicated. I know we have to be careful about work boundaries. But after the gala, after things settle down, can we figure this out? Can we see if there's something real here? Yes, Becca whispered. Yes, we can figure it out. They sat there holding hands in a diner at 2 in the morning, and Becca felt like her life had finally clicked into place. She'd saved a stranger on a sidewalk, lost everything, been lifted back up, built something meaningful, and somehow, impossibly, found someone who saw her not as broken or struggling, but as whole and valuable and worth loving. Tomorrow would be huge. The gala would determine the foundation's future. But right now, in this moment, Becca just felt grateful. Grateful for kindness that had come back to her. Grateful for second chances. Grateful for Jonathan Hayes and everything he'd brought into her life. Ready for tomorrow? Jonathan asked. Ready, Becca said. And she was. The gala was beautiful. The venue, a restored historic building in downtown Nashville, gleamed with lights and flowers. 200 people filled the space, including local business leaders, philanthropists, and the 30 people the Second Chance Initiative had hired. Becca wore a deep blue dress that Sophie had helped her pick out, the silver necklace from Jonathan at her throat. Her daughter was with Mrs. Patterson for the evening, but she'd sent her mom off with a tight hug and the words, "You look like a princess, Mom." Standing at the edge of the room, watching people mingle, Becca felt surreal. 6 months ago she'd been facing eviction. Now she was co-director of a foundation, surrounded by people who believed in second chances. Jonathan appeared beside her, handsome in a dark suit. "You look beautiful." "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." "Are you ready for your speech?" "Terrified, but ready." The program started at 7. Jonathan spoke first, telling the story of how the foundation began. He didn't shy away from the hard parts, talking about collapsing on the street, about waking up in the hospital, about learning that the woman who saved him had lost her job because of it. That could have been the end, he said. A sad story about how no good deed goes unpunished. But instead, it became the beginning of a friendship, the beginning of a program that's helped dozens of people. And now, the beginning of a foundation that will help hundreds more. He gestured to Becca. None of this would exist without Rebecca Thompson. Her kindness started everything. Her vision shaped it. Her dedication makes it work. Please welcome my partner in this endeavor, who will tell you about where we're going next. Becca walked to the microphone, her hands shaking slightly. She looked out at the crowd and saw Robert Chen, Christine Baker, and the others they'd hired, all smiling encouragement. She saw Mrs. Patterson, who'd surprised her by attending. She saw Jonathan, who gave her a reassuring nod. When I stopped to help a man on a sidewalk last July, I didn't think about consequences. I just thought about a person who needed help. That choice cost me my job and nearly cost me my home. But it also gave me something I didn't expect. It gave me purpose. She talked about the foundation's mission, about the emergency fund they'd established, about the job placement services they were developing. She talked about the legal assistance program for people wrongfully terminated. She talked about their plans to expand across Tennessee and eventually to other states. But more than programs and services, we're creating something bigger. We're creating a community that values kindness over convenience. A network of people who believe doing the right thing should be celebrated, not punished. A movement that says compassion and success can go together. She told stories of people they'd helped. A nurse who'd stopped to help at an accident and been fired, now working at a clinic. A teacher who'd stayed late with a struggling student and lost his job, now running an after-school program. A contractor who'd helped a neighbor and lost a client, now managing maintenance for 3 buildings. Every person we help becomes someone who helps others. The kindness multiplies. It spreads. It changes communities. And that's what we're really building here. Not just a foundation, but a ripple effect of good that will reach farther than any of us can imagine. The applause was thunderous. People stood, clapping and cheering. Becca stepped back from the microphone, overwhelmed. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Donors committed funds. Local organizations offered partnerships. Media outlets asked for interviews. By the end of the night, they'd raised enough money to fund the foundation for 2 years and expand to 3 more cities. As the last guests left, Jonathan found Becca standing on the balcony overlooking the city. "We did it," he said quietly. "We really did. You know what the best part is?" "What?" "We've helped 200 families directly so far. But they are going to help others. And those others will help more. In 5 years, 10 years, the ripple effect of what was started today could touch thousands of lives. Maybe tens of thousands. All because you stopped on a sidewalk one morning." Becca leaned against the railing, looking at the city where her life had fallen apart and been rebuilt. "It's strange. I thought losing my job was the worst thing that could happen. But if it hadn't happened, none of this would exist. Sometimes what feels like the end is really just the beginning." Jonathan moved closer, his hand finding hers. "Speaking of beginnings, I meant what I said the other night. I want to figure out what this is between us. But I want to do it right. I don't want you to feel pressured because I'm your boss or because you feel grateful." "I don't feel pressured," Becca said firmly. "And this isn't about gratitude. It's about—" She searched for the right words. "It's about recognizing someone who sees you, really sees you. Not what you can do for them or what you represent, but who you actually are. You see me, Jonathan. And I see you too. Then let's take this slow. Let's keep building the foundation and see where things go. No pressure, no expectations. Just 2 people who care about each other figuring things out." "I'd like that." They stood there together, hands linked, looking at the lights of Nashville. Behind them, the venue staff were cleaning up from a night that would change hundreds of lives. Around them, the city hummed with possibility. 3 months later, the foundation had hired 15 more staff members and helped over 100 families. Jonathan's son Michael had started visiting regularly, helping with foundation events and slowly rebuilding his relationship with his father. Sophie had adjusted to seeing more of Jonathan, treating him like a favorite uncle and occasionally asking when he was going to be her dad for real. Becca and Jonathan were officially dating, though they kept it quiet at work. They had dinner together most evenings, went to Sophie's school events together, and talked for hours about dreams and plans. It felt right in a way nothing else ever had. On a warm evening in May, almost a year after that morning on the sidewalk, they attended the foundation's first anniversary celebration. This time, Sophie was there, dressed in a purple dress and helping hand out programs. During his speech, Jonathan did something unexpected. He called Sophie up to the stage. "This young lady," he said, putting his hand on her shoulder, "has been an inspiration to me. She reminds me what's important. Family, kindness, seeing the good in people. She's shown me how to be better." He looked at Becca. "And her mother has shown me what courage and grace look like." Then he pulled out a piece of paper. "We're announcing something big tonight. The foundation is expanding to 10 more cities. We're hiring a national director to oversee this expansion, someone who understands our mission and has proven their ability to lead with compassion." He looked at Becca, smiling. "Rebecca Thompson, would you accept the position of National Director of the Second Chance Foundation?" Becca stood, stunned. The room erupted in applause. She walked to the stage in a daze, Sophie grabbing her hand. "You earned this," Jonathan said quietly as she reached him. "Not because of what happened last July, but because of what you've built since then. You're changing lives, Becca. Now you're going to change even more." She accepted, her voice shaking but clear. "I promise to honor this trust, to help as many people as possible, to make sure kindness is always recognized and celebrated." After the program, as they walked to the parking lot, Sophie between them holding both their hands, Becca looked up at the stars. One choice, one morning, one moment of kindness. And it had led to all of this. "What are you thinking?" Jonathan asked. "I'm thinking about that morning. When I saw you lying there, I didn't know who you were or what would happen. I just knew someone needed help. And now look where we are. You saved more than my life that day. You saved my soul. You reminded me what matters. He stopped walking, turning to face her. Sophie stepped away slightly, grinning like she knew what was coming. Becca, I know this is fast. I know we've only been officially dating for a few months. But I've learned that life is short and precious and should be spent with people who make you better. You make me better. You and Sophie both. He pulled out a small box. Becca's breath caught. I'm not asking you to marry me tonight. I know that's too fast. But I'm asking if you'll think about a future together. The three of us, and Michael too. A real family built on kindness and respect and love. Will you think about it? Tears streamed down Becca's face. I don't need to think about it. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Sophie whooped and jumped up and down. Does this mean Mr. Jonathan is going to be my dad? If you want me to be, Jonathan said, kneeling down to her level. I'd be honored to be your dad, Sophie. You're an amazing kid. She threw her arms around his neck. I want you to be my dad. And I want a brother. Michael is cool. They stood there in the parking lot, the three of them together, while Nashville glowed around them. Inside the building, the foundation staff was celebrating the expansion that would help thousands more people. In homes across Tennessee, families were sleeping peacefully because someone had given them a second chance. And somewhere, someone was probably making a choice to help a stranger, not knowing how that choice would change everything. Becca thought about the journey, from a sidewalk to an eviction notice, to a new job to a foundation to love. It had been terrifying and beautiful and worth every difficult moment. She'd learned that kindness always comes back, often in ways you never expect. That doing the right thing matters, even when it costs you. That second chances can change not just your life but hundreds of lives. As they drove home, Sophie already asleep in the backseat, Jonathan reached over and took Becca's hand. Ready for what comes next? Becca squeezed his hand, looking at the road ahead illuminated by headlights. Ready for anything, as long as we're together. And as Nashville faded behind them and the future stretched out ahead, Becca knew that choosing kindness that one morning had been the best decision of her life. It had cost her everything and given her more than she'd ever dreamed. It had shown her that love, hope, and generosity could overcome any obstacle. And that sometimes, the right choice at the right moment can change not just one life, but hundreds, rippling out in waves of goodness that never really end. They were proof that kindness wins. That second chances matter. That love can bloom from unexpected places. And that when you choose to help someone, you never know how far that choice will reach.